This is Professor Cruz for World Cultural Geography. This is week 2. We're going to cover some basic concepts. Last week we started by introducing the research method called geographic inquiry. This week we'll begin to understand the geographic concepts that will supplement the geographic inquiry method with basic concepts to give you background to successfully collect, explore, and analyze your data. Often the geographic information we collected is presented in the form of a map. We explored several types of maps last week. The first map on the top left shows the reference map, which shows the location of the District of Columbia. The choropleth map on the bottom right shows the change in the population by ward between 2000 and 2010. The dark green color represents the wards that have the highest rate of population growth. The gray areas represent the areas which have declining growth. What patterns did you notice for the population change for this time period? This data was collected to answer the question, how and where did the population change between 2000 and 2010, and was collected using census data. Another modern method used to collect data is remote sensing, which is the acquisition of data about the Earth's surface from a satellite orbiting Earth or from airplanes. A map created by remote sensing is using a grid that contains many rows of pixels. Geographers use remote sensing to map the changing distribution of a wide variety of features such as agriculture, drought, and sprawl. These images were collected from Goddard Space Flight Center camera above the Earth. The camera first shows the whole United States and eventually zooms in to focus on the U.S. Capitol. This is an example of how remote sensing can be used to show an area from a global perspective to a local perspective. You can use Google Maps to find a map of your house collected via remote sensing. Satellites are also used to reference locations on the ground. GPS, or Global Positioning System, is the most commonly used for navigation. Pilots of aircrafts and ships use it for navigation, as do drivers. On land, GPS detects a vehicle's current position. The motorist programs the desired destination into the device, and the device provides instructions on how to reach the destination. GPS can also be used to find a person or a vehicle. I recently served on a jury trial where a GPS bracelet on a parolee was an important component of the prosecution. It answered the question, where was this person at a particular time? All maps are based on a standard geographic coordinate system which gives each place a unique mathematical value based on its latitude and longitude. This kind of gives us a mathematical location to describe a place. The longitude is culturally defined as starting in Greenwich, England, and measures degrees of east and west of that line of longitude, which is at the 0 degree longitude line in Greenwich, known as the prime meridian. And that's the line in red vertically on this globe that's shown with red coloring. The latitude, which is shown horizontally at the 0 area around the Earth's equator, is known as the latitude line. Latitude line is known as a parallel because the lines are parallel to the equator. UDC is located at 38.9 degrees north latitude and 77 degrees west longitude. Another way to describe a place is a toponym, or a place name. Habited and uninhabited places have place names, and the names and places are often culturally motivated. Examining changes in place name geography is a useful insight into the changing cultural context of a place. For example, just last year, after decades of lobbying by the people of Alaska, the name Denali was given back to the highest mountain in North America. It was officially restored by the Board of Geographical Names, which is a national organization. In the late 19th century, Denali was renamed Mount McKinley after President McKinley. The name Denali was restored by the state of Alaska in 1975, but not officially renamed by the U.S. until September 2015. The Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, stated, "This name change recognizes the sacred status of Denali to many Alaska natives." The term site makes reference to the physical characteristics or the immediate environment of a place. Important site characteristics include climate, water sources, topography, vegetation, latitude, and elevation. They give each location a distinct character. The following description describes the site of Washington, D.C. D.C. is located in the northern and western hemispheres. It is located in the mid-latitudes. D.C. is in the humid subtropical climate zone dominated by deciduous forest vegetation. It is located on the Potomac and Anacostia rivers and is bisected by Rock Creek. D.C. is located on the Atlantic coastal plain. This map places Washington, D.C. within a broader context or situation. Its location in relation to other parts of the United States, to the Appalachian Mountains, and to various river systems. Situation describes a place in terms of its location relative to other places. Understanding situation can help locate an unfamiliar place in terms of known places, or it can help explain the significance of a place. We often give directions using situation of a place. We identify important buildings, streets, and other landmarks to direct people to a desired location. Washington, D.C. is about 40 miles from the Chesapeake Bay and is about 230 miles southeast of New York City's Pennsylvania train station. It is surrounded by the Capitol Beltway, which links the area to I-95, the major highway on the United States East Coast. This tells us why this situation might be important. A region is a unique area of Earth defined by one or more distinctive characteristics. A particular place can be included in more than one region depending on how the region is defined. The cultural landscape is a recurrent theme in your textbook, and it represents the total sum of cultural, economic, and environment forces combining to make distinctive landscapes across Earth. This map places Washington, D.C. in the region of North America. A formal region is a region with a predominant or universal characteristics. They usually have well-defined boundaries. A shared feature could be a cultural value such as a common language or an environmental property such as climate. In a formal region, the selected characteristic is present throughout the region. Some formal regions are easy to identify because they are countries, states, and cities or other local government units. A characteristic may also be predominant. For example, the North American wheat belt is a formal region in which wheat is the most commonly grown crop, but other crops are grown there as well. Generally, formal regions are made up of measurable characteristics, such as climate. A functional region is defined by an area of use or influence of some feature, making the region a little more fuzzy than formal regions. The functional region is organized around a focal point. So in this map, the focal point is the WAMU radio station located in Washington, D.C. The signal is strongest at the center of the service area, which in this map is in green, and in this case, the gray area represents areas where the signal cannot be reached. Vernacular regions or perceptual regions are defined by people's attitudes or feeling about an area. They are based on a person's mental map, which is an internal representation of a portion of the Earth's surface, so what you think about a place. Mental maps are frequently based on stereotypes, as people's definitions of perceptual regions are influenced by travel, media, reading films, and conversation. Therefore, perceptual regions are more likely than other kinds of regions to change over time. This map shows perceptual regions of North America. People have different ideas about what areas are included in the South. Here's another map of a perceptual region for North America, which contains the empty quarter, an area where we noted from our dot distribution map that few people actually live. As we move throughout the semester, you will notice that different agencies, countries, and people define country and world regions differently. Next week, we'll see regions defined by the United Nations and the Population Reference Bureau. Why do you think people use different regional definitions? Which ones make sense to you? Does it depend upon your geographic question? It is important for us to consider how different groups consider the world because the globalization of economic activities has come as a result of increasing connections between places and the rapid movement of goods and information around the world. Every place in the world is part of the global economy. Transnational corporations conduct research, operate factories, and sell products in many countries, not just where its headquarters are located. Each place in the world plays a distinctive role in the global economy based on its local assets, as assessed by transnational corporations. This series of images contains graphs and proportional symbol maps that show the globalization of Starbucks and McDonald's. The maps show how many Starbucks stores and McDonald's restaurants are found in each country. The Starbucks map also shows the sources of coffee beans, paper products, and sugar, which are used for all the Starbucks restaurants. Which countries are the sources for Starbucks products but do not contain any stores? The Starbucks example demonstrates Wallerstein's world systems theory, which divides the world economy into the global core, the semi-periphery, and the periphery. In this map, the global core countries are in orange, the semi-periphery countries in yellow, and the periphery countries in green. The core states are the geographically advantaged areas of the world, particularly Europe and North America, and Oceania. And there's also a few other countries like Japan. The peripheral areas are the least developed. They are exploited by the core for their cheap labor, raw materials, and agricultural production. The semi-peripheral areas are somewhat intermediate, being both exploited by the core and take some role in the exploitation of the peripheral areas. In the recent past, they have been expanding their manufacturing activities, particularly in products that the core nations no longer find profitable. And this is particularly evident in the production of textiles, which no longer take place in the United States for the most part. And here's another representation of the global core and periphery. Deblay stated that the worst poverty persists in the periphery. This map shows the core countries and the periphery countries. And as you will see in the next chapters on population, the global core contains only 15% of the global population, while the periphery represents 85% of the population. The numbers on this map refer to places where governments try to prevent undocumented migrants from moving from the periphery to the core. As we move through this week, consider what regions are you a part of and how are those regions defined, and how is your life affected by globalization? And we look forward to considering next week, where does the world's population live? Until later, continue to have fun exploring cultural geography.